All right, I am going to attempt to talk while I work on this video and give you guys a little bit of a longer video on one of my little watercolors that I do when I take little road trips. Been doing these for about a year now. Some people refer to them as like urban sketches. I shy away from that term because for me, most of the time when I go and do these, I'm not in any kind of urban setting. I do like to sketch out and paint scenes that have buildings in them, along with a little bit of nature sometimes. That kind of contrast between those architectural shapes and natural shapes of trees, clouds, or whatnot. This particular piece I'm working on right now, I did the sketch for it while I was sitting on the side of the road. Probably look like a weirdo. I bring my little chair with me, and it's in a town that if it has more than 300 people in it, I'd be surprised. I could be wrong on that. Somebody can totally correct me. I'll give you guys the name of the town later. I'll have to look it back up because I've forgotten which one it was at this moment. I visited, I think, 4 or 5 towns in one day whenever I sketched this. And I sat on the side of the road in the heat in my little chair right next to an intersection of 2 highways. Probably only saw 4 cars the whole time I was there. Each of them looking at me like I was a weirdo. But I sit there and sketch them out lightly, usually in ink. This one I went a little bit more defined on than I normally do. Usually I'll bring this kind of definition in after I've done watercolor. But I purposely did this one a little bit more defined because there was some really hard, crisp lines that I was seeing in the way the lighting was that day. Very bright day with very strong cast shadows. And I wanted to remember that as I came back to color it. So, we're going to get started coloring. I've got my watercolors here. Got some liquid watercolors as well as some little pans. Got my water. And using the same brushes I'd use if I was actually out doing this on the road. I've stopped watercoloring these out on the road mostly because of gas prices. At this point, I can take a trip and sketch 4 or 5 of these in one trip, and then come back over the next couple of weeks and sit here and watercolor them whenever I get a little opportunity, usually really early in the morning, like it is this morning. The sun's not up yet. Anyhow, let's get to putting some watercolor down. what I've done here is just a little wash, and then I like to come in and break it up just a little bit with the towel there. Kind of looks like real faint clouds in the background on this one. Really want the focus not to be on the sky in this one, but really on the cast shadows that there are in this building. So I think I'm going to start working on some of those. So get my blue. Got a nasty little mess over here that might work well for shadow. Test this color real quick on another little piece of paper. That's kind of what I want. So go ahead and go across this. Just gonna get this shadow area filled in with a tone for now. Set that little bit of a mood there. One of the reasons I really like working in watercolors and stuff like this is it's a little bit more raw, a little bit more unpredictable than the pinstriping and acrylic paintings and all that I do. Let's go ahead and get some of this color out here too. I like the fact that it bleeds over. It could be more controlled, but I'm not really into controlling it a whole lot. Really kind of like letting it do its thing. You know, it's one of the other reasons whenever I sit here and draw these out, or not sit here, but sit on a roadside or wherever else and draw these out. The reason I do it in ink is so that I'm not planning stuff. I'm not sketching stuff. I'm just, you know, when I say sketching there, I mean like trying to find things and figure it out and erase stuff or anything. What I'm really after is just putting it down immediately, letting mistakes be mistakes, really just keeping a record of what my hand's done. It also forces me to stay kind of loose. I'm going to get this same color there, but a little bit more watered down, just to have barely a little bit of color on this side. This roof on this thing was being hit with direct sunlight, creating cast shadows that almost went straight down. And I thought it was really kind of neat. So I want parts of this to be basically white. Let's pull a little bit of that off right there. Keep that from being too dark. So these will be totally white. These will have just a hint of color to them. And I think we might do that too. This little patch of roof that shows up right here. This little patch back there. And that one's almost too dark, so I'm gonna pull a little bit more out. Now, while I've been doing that, my sky has had an opportunity to dry a little bit. And I don't really care about bleeding too much on these. I like it. I think it keeps it raw looking, so I'm going to start mixing up some greens. But again, I think this is kind of a hot situation, so we're going to make sure that there's some yellow in my green. think we're going to get a little bit more yellow to work with here. Nope, that's not it. I like this kind of orangey yellow. What do they call this color here? I'm not sure. New Gambage. New Gambage. Can't tell if that's an O or an A. Get a little bit of this in here. Oh, that's nice and warm. That's a good color for this. Alright, so again, just working with some washes just to get some color down. And I'm not going to worry about filling it in totally here. It's not a coloring book. Gotta let watercolor do what watercolor does. And that's bleed around a little bit and have fun. That might be a little greener than I want. Get a little bit of that back in there. Or I guess a little bluer than I wanted it. Okay. Right here on the roadside, usually rain settles there and things get a little greener, so let's do a little bit of that. Let's a little bit of the opposite in here. It's sometimes kind of nice. It'd make for some kind of dirty brownish tones. The ground's usually covered in that kind of stuff. Skip it around a little. I think I want that to have a bit more color in it. Let's make that a little more saturated. I wouldn't say I'm a professional watercolorist by any shot. I like playing with it. I like what it does. I've kind of developed my ways of working with it. Always learning new stuff. Especially with watercolor for me. There's a lot to learn. I want this to be a little more saturated. I might end up putting a shadow up by the building here a little bit, but I think I'm going to just get some water here and see if I can't make some of those bleed a little bit more right in here. I think it's a little too stark. I don't want to overwork it, but I think that gives us a little something. Maybe we'll go ahead and do our tree over here, get it started. What I tend to do is work light to dark. Get some light washes in and add detail and add shadows and add more saturation and whatnot later. See some people that do some beautiful watercolors where they come in straight with some saturated coloring. I'm not there yet. Maybe one day if I get to master it a little bit more, I'll start doing that. You know, I took some photographs when I was working, and I kind of reference them a little bit while I'm doing this, just to remember stuff. But for the most part, I'm not really trying to copy the photographs. I'm trying to do what works best for the picture. Try to look at my photos as little as possible. seen some really cool techniques for getting foliage from other artists. Yet to perfect them. Just kind of scribble with my brush tip seems to get the idea of what I want. What I'm going to do, I'm going to switch my color here and go ahead and add some more of that red into that. I'll have a little bit different color tree right there. Not a big difference. It's like a little bell that was right there in that spot. Which is kind of neat. It's next to their sign, part of their sign. Got my little car sitting back there in their parking lot. Yeah, let's get a little bit of this in there. Okay, so while I've been working on that, this is drying some, that's drying some, this is drying some. My driest thing is my sky, but I think I'm going to come back and work on my building. We're going to create another shadow layer here. Darken up some of that. Started with my cool colors. I like having cool colors as shadows. Usually try not to add black unless I'm using it to dull a color out. So right here I'm going to dull this blue with black. I don't find that it necessarily makes it darker, not with watercolors, because I'm using a lot of water to keep it light. That's kind of mostly blue. I want to kill some of that blueness. I'm going to add a little bit of red-ish to it. That makes it a little bit more gray. Violet kind of gray. Let's use that. A little bit of this off. I don't want to be too saturated. Okay, so if I remember, this is like a brick area here. That was a little bit darker. So we'll start by painting that in. With this. Yeah, that kind of looks like a dark shadow color. I'm going to come back up here and give this some more of this. This is just a bright contrast between light and the shade that was up there. It was really neat. I think we'll go ahead and see if we can, with this big brush, make a little extra shadow for our eaves here without going too big. There was a cast shadow right there, if I remember. Put that guy there again. That's kind of neat looking. Let's go ahead and give some shadow to this propane tank that was hanging out here. Add some more color to him later. Starting to get there. I think while I've got this color, I'm going to go ahead and try to make my road a little darker. I'm trying not to push too hard here, so I get a little bit of texture with it, if I can. Maybe that'll help it look a little bit more like a road. Alright, I think I'm actually going to lighten this up a little bit, or a lot bit. Add a wash again. Let's see, this area in here might be a little darker. It'll help give some more depth. I'm going to do that wall, I'm going to do this wall. And that wall faces this way. There's a little bit of a wall, maybe that peeks back there. Not much. I'm going to go ahead and put a light wash on this sign. Thought it was interesting. You get these triangle shapes. triangle shapes, kind of big triangular shape. The windows had little triangle shapes around the tops. Triangle here, their sign over here was a triangle shape. Let's get a little bit more paint here. Some of that dark off there. We're going to make our windows stand out a little more. Might be working too much wet on wet right there, so I'm just going to walk away from it. And sometimes it's neat to make one part of the window dark and one part light. I looked at my reference picture and that reminded me of that. These little triangles up here I want to stand out, so we're going to give them a little bit more. And they had, this was windows over here, then arch. And these little windows. Point in these watercolors isn't to capture all the detail in the world. I'm not trying to make something like I make whenever I do my acrylic paintings that are hyper realistic. I want to try and keep these loose and sketchy looking. Go ahead and get some depth on that. Maybe this is dry enough to where I can add a little bit more. Makes it look like something with some movement there. Maybe we'll get a little bit more right there. There we go. Alright, I think my grass and all might be dark enough to make some shadows on it now. So let's get more of that blue again mixed with this green. And I'm going to dull it out by adding kind of its opposite. Might be too much of its opposite. Let's build some more of that into this. Alright, that's kind of a dark green. Might not be as saturated as I really want it. Let's really get some color in it. That way we can tell that this building is going to be a white building, and not that everything in the world is light here. So I'm going to come in and start building some shadows around the ground, I think. Some darks in there. There's some shadow underneath this propane tank. A little shadow kicked off of that tree. I'll go ahead and put some of this foliage that was like vines, I think it was, growing on that. Let's see, I'll add some shadow out here. I think it's coming off of that roof. This is actually a bush. Give him some color to him for now. Shadow going. Maybe a little, there's some dark hedge stuff going on there. I get some depth to our trees here with this. Dimension. Let's add real quick opposite in there. That way it's got a little gradation in it. Let's get this one dark like that too. I like that color better. Quick touches. Don't want to overwork it. Some might say I'm overworking it. Let's get a little bit more of this yellow into that. It's like a yellow ochre. Let's come in on this guy. That way we know he's a different tree than this other one that's got the blue greens in it. I'll get some of that in, maybe in this guy. Again, I'm just kind of scribbling with the brush. don't want a lot of rhyme and reason to what I'm doing here. Nature's not that tame. Some more of that in there. Well, look at this for a minute. See, I want contrast. I really want this to look bright. And I think in order to do that, I'm going to have to make this in here darker still. There's a lot of bright here. Sun's beating down. It's hot. Sun's definitely beating on that roof. We're going to go darker on these walls. See a little shadow that I want to add. This little sign over here was cool because it had its own little roof to it. So we're going to give it a little eave. And let's go ahead and work on darkening some of that in. I'm going to get a little bit more black in this. Maybe that'll work. I really want some blue in it. I don't want it to be too black. Alright. Let's hope we don't mess it up. We'll start with the look to me to be the biggest contrast. Up in that eave. Maybe I think that might be getting there. Now, let's go ahead and do this eave. I think there's some things that are still too wet to put a big wash over that. I don't want too much to blend together at the moment. So we're just going to work on windows, getting them even darker. Probably put another wash over this later. If these come out of my shapes, aren't square, I really don't care. I'll probably tighten them up with the pen when I'm done. Let's get that up here. And we'll make this kind of stepped down in shade. I'm going to go ahead and use some of this on this tree. We'll add warmth to it later. For now, that works. Okay, I think I want a little bit of warmth. I don't know how this is going to work. Let me get a little bit of red in it. I'm going to add a little bit of warmth to this. I believe it was painted white, but I think it'll look more like it's stone if I do this. And that's definitely kind of the coloring that I want for this propane tank to have some on. Kind of dirty, rusty, once painted, not so much anymore. Even smudge it there a little bit. Little color, not a lot. Let's give him a little red too. Maybe it'll look even more rusty then. You know what, I liked it being a little darker on that there. Let's do that. Yeah, nice. If I had that darker, well, it might be too soon to do that. Let's not do that yet. You know what I haven't worked on yet is my little flags. I had to take a picture. They didn't have an American flag and a Texas flag. They had an American flag and what I would only assume is a flag associated with the church that this was. And I honestly don't remember what kind of church it was. Little recognizable stripes. I don't even remember what colors it was. We'll put a little bit of red there. I want to say it had some blue to it. I'm going to get some bright-ish blue. That way it screams out and tells us, hey man, it's an American flag. So I like that. That also sets the mood of how dark I think I want to go with my darkest darks. So, we're going to make a little bit darker dark. Oh, that's going to be way too dark right there. But, more blue in it, that's what water's for. Okay. I'll dry my brush out just a little bit, soak some of that up, and go right back in here. Boy, it looks dark on my palette, but it's not as dark up here. But I think that'll be dark enough for our purposes that we have here. Let's see, I think I'm going to use my brush to make this little electrical conduit deal there. Let's get that little bitty drop shadow area there darker. Maybe the spots on my windows. Back up underneath this guy. And you know what? I'm definitely going to use that on this tree. Alright, I think I want some of that dark color in my tree too. Might have too much water on my brush. A little drier there. Let's dry it out a little more even. There we go. You can get some little textural doodads here. Let's go ahead and use that to make some tree trunk kind of deals here. We can darken those in with ink later. Gives us a little something. I don't think there's quite enough. A little something there. And add a little bit into that color change. Maybe bring it down a little more. The bottoms. Kind of dark. Alright, get a little bit of that in this bush. Again, trying to make some dark contrast so that building looks brighter and whiter. Maybe we'll add to our shadow. Again, some of this. I don't know that I want to go as dark with the trees in the background. That way we have some atmospheric perspective, you know, as things go farther away, they get lighter. So if I don't go too dark back there, maybe that'll help give us a little bit more depth. And with that in mind, maybe I need to get a little brighter on my grass up here too. So, let's make a green again, saturate that grass. Yeah, I think I've got too much black in my brush. Yeah, we're going to clean that, clean our spot, make a fresh, brighter green. Can't make it bright if there's black in the brush. Alright, here we go. Trying this again. A lot of that there. little bit of that blue. Maybe we'll go straight for some of this green here to add to it. That's a bright green. I want it to be a little bit more blue. And I think that'll work. So I think I'm going to dry my brush out here, then pull up some of that, and maybe I can get a little bit more texture out of it this time. I'm working on smooth watercolor paper here. It's arches, but it's a smooth arches, so it's kind of hard to get the texture I really want. I think I need to buy me some of the rougher textured arches. There was kind of a hillside. This was up high and it dropped down, so I'm kind of trying to let that be a little drier looking. Definitely want a lot of that up here. That's starting to look a little brighter. Let's do it again. Get some of that one. That's a brighter yellow. Just kind of skipping it around a little bit here and there. That's kind of getting there. Maybe I do want this to be a little bit more. That might have got too dark, but I don't think I can change that. So we're just going to let it be. A little greener than I really wanted it, but oh well. Alright, let's see. What else can I work on? I wanted to make that just a little darker. I think now... Oh, too much green in that. I think now it's dry enough there, though, that I can do that. Let's get this green out of this brush. Get that green that I put in that area right there out. Mix up some shadow again. I'm going to start with that, because that was pretty much what all that up there was. It's kind of a shadow. Yeah, I think that'll work. Here we go again. That's toning it down really fast. And we're going to roll with it, whether it's what we really want or not. That made that a lot darker, a lot faster, and actually I think that's what I was after. I need to get a little bit more of that out here now. Kind of balance. Alright, I think we're almost done with the watercolor on this. Want to add some color right there, but I just wet that, so I need to wait. So I'm going to see if there's something else that I can add to. You know what? Let's get a little color on my little car back here. We'll just do... maybe a little darker. I don't want to go too dark because, again, I'm aiming for that atmospheric perspective. That's not bad. I think maybe we need something there. And that was stone. So I'm going to come in with this warm color. And we're going to work on a little bit more color on that. Since I noticed that, it becomes too much like that tree color, so I'm probably going to change that, add a little bit of bright green in that after this dries. There's a... we'll get a little color on this bell. I don't know, again. And I might go ahead and use that now on this telephone pole, power line pole, whatever kind of pole. Let's go a little darker on that. If I can, I'm trying to stay on one side of this, so maybe it'll create some depth on it. And let's give it a little shadow. Maybe that was too much shadow, but we did it. Some shadow underneath there, branches again. Come back over here into this. Might give us a little bit more depth there. More shadow again. There was some window that's gotten lost over here. I don't know if that'll show up as a window or not. There's a white spot I don't like. I'm just going to fill it in. Don't know what it is. Don't really care. A little... might be something I didn't want, but just kind of adds a little texture. And I think that might be good enough. There was something else I wanted to do, and I don't remember what it was, so it must not be important. So I think we'll move on to our inks. You know what I might do real fast is do just a little light wash in this area. A little bit of breaking up that white, not much. Do the same right there. Alright. So, I'm going to call that done for the watercolors. Again, not trying to overdo it. Don't want to work it too much. I want to keep it raw. Not a lot of color going on in this one, but I'm going to let this dry for just a little bit. And then I'm going to come back with an ink pen and build a little bit of focus, some crispness somewhere. Alright, I really only had to wait a few minutes for this to dry. While I did, I went ahead and looked it up. The town that this was in was Carlton, Texas. And this is Carlton, I believe, Baptist Church is what I found. Let me double check that. Yep, Carlton Baptist Church. So I'm going to write that in here, but I'm not really writing it. I'm kind of putting marks that are parts of the letters. Because it's not something that I want to really draw your attention, but I do want you to be able to know that there's writing on that. And with there being writing on that, this other sign that it had also had writing. I don't know what it said on it. So, we're just going to put some marks that might look like writing. And kind of leave it at that. It's not the important part. I want the focus to be on the building. I kind of like the little propane tank too, so I might bring some focus out in that. When I looked it up, Carlton, let's see, let me read this for you because I thought it was really kind of interesting. I read that Carlton reached its peak population in, what does it say, 1910 with 750 people. So that's why it's peak. And it's dropped since then and continued to drop over the years. And the last time they gave us numbers was around 2000, where it says it has about 400 people. No, I'm sorry. 70 people. 400 was back around 1940. There's only about 70 people in this community here. Pretty small community. So I'm sure that me sitting out on the street corner there, drawing, and only seeing a couple of cars, there's a reason they were looking at me like a weirdo. I want that. I think I want this line right there to stand out a little bit more. Not too much. We don't want to go too crazy with this. And I might already be getting there. I like these triangles. I want them to be a little bit more defined. Let's define the edge of this tree a little bit more. That way it breaks it up from the building. And again, I'm just kind of using a scribble technique here. You know, when I went through Carlton, I was actually hoping to find an old downtown area to draw in. And there was one. It was maybe like 2 or 3 buildings on 3 street corners at an intersection. But it was a little depressing to me because it looked like there'd been a fire or something recently. And what was an old corner service station, from what I could tell from photos, wasn't there anymore. It was rubble. It was kind of out into the road and roped off. So I drove down the road and found this and was really kind of taken by the shading in it. I feel like what we might need in this picture is some sort of lines right through here. Help us know that this is a street. So I'm going to see if I can't do something here that's, maybe that's the white line on the edge of the road. I don't know, you're not really seeing it well. Might come in with my white pen. There are lines down the middle of the road. Maybe we can hint at those. Maybe we can get a little bit of yellow in here. I think I want to define this a little more so that it stands out from the building. And this tree definitely doesn't look like a tree yet, so we can give more depth by having darker lines on these than what's behind them. Kind of a comic book kind of thing to do. What's in the foreground stands out because it's got darker lines. So let's do that to our electric pole here too. More definition on it. That way we get a little bit more depth. I like to sometimes not much at all. A little bit of pen texture out here, since this is the street edge. And this too. Grass grows in patches and stuff. Asphalt gets chipped away. Man, I don't know that I want to add much more to this at all. Let's go ahead and put a signature on it over here. I always start my signature in the middle of the letters, because I'm used to doing it with pinstriping to where I'm kind of trying to keep it symmetrical under my design. I've just gotten kind of used to it. You know what? I did my curve backwards. Oh, well. 2022 on the dot. I kind of like that that's in the grassy area there and you can't see it as much. I think I do want this little bush to stand out a little more. And there was some stairs here. We're going to make those stand out a little more. And stairs over here. I like the idea of those standing out. I was thinking about that actually when I was drawing this. Most of the stairs are what lead you into the building. You know, so maybe if I make those stand out a little bit more, our little visual journey with our eye will lead us into that building a little bit more. Kind of think I'm going to call that done. Let's peel the tape, which always helps. I should probably get myself some white tape instead of this green. That way I'm not looking at the tone of this green when I'm painting. It does affect things. It affects your eye. And I think, now that I get this peeled off, I have that little white edge, I think I got the effect that I wanted, which was that this is bright, super, super bright. The shadows are standing out good. It looks like a bright day. And I think we're going to call that one done. Hope y'all enjoyed this. Please tell me if you like videos like this one. Little different than the videos I've done before. This is one of the things that I do. I don't just pinstripe and make paintings of cars. Almost all that I do. But I really like getting out and doing road trips. It's kind of also part of that car thing. I feel like it's still sort of on brand. I like driving the country roads. Seeing what's around me. Exploring and even celebrating the little small towns and their history. Researching those and roadside attractions and stuff. To me, that's kind of part of what car culture is all about. That freedom to get out and see stuff. Cars have done an awful lot to grow some of these towns. Some of them wouldn't exist without roads coming through, and some of them died off because those roads got moved away, and that story's part of car history there. Anyhow, hope y'all enjoyed this. Please let me know if you want to see more videos of these. I kind of liked making it. I go back and watch it and see if it's too boring. But I'm trying to do a lot of these little watercolors. I'd like to get out at least once a week. And at this point, do 4 or 5 of them if I can at a time and come back and watercolor them later. So, have a good day. Thanks.